Hi, I'm Jim Stroud, and this is my podcast. Today, I interview Stefan Rivard, CEO of Hiring Branch, to discuss eliminating bias from the interview process and what better way is there to do that than by removing interviewing from the hiring process completely. More on that after this. Hey, guess what? I will be speaking at SourceCon in Minneapolis about the impact of AI on the recruitment industry. It's been a long time since I spoke in public, thank you COVID, but I'm back on the circuit now. If you want to see my triumphant return to the stage or my spectacular failure, time will tell, meet me at SourceCon in Minneapolis, September 21st through September 22nd. Register now because tickets are going fast. And when you do register, use the code JSSSCFLL23 to get 10% off the ticket price. I'll say it again because it was a mouthful. Use the code JSSCFLL23 to get 10% off the ticket price. I'll say it again. Never mind. Just look at the podcast description. The discount code and the link to register is there for your convenience. Now, will I see you soon at SourceCon? I hope so. SourceCon, here I come! Hello and welcome to the Jim Stroud podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Special guest, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Stefan Rivard. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hiring Branch. And what we do is that we help companies hire for performance by eliminating interviews, especially for frontline workers.
Eliminating interviews. I think that's how you got on my radar. You were talking with a mutual acquaintance about how you hire people without interviewing them. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we went out to create a platform that really helps companies that are hiring in high volume, which represents the majority of companies out there, and customer-facing roles. And we wanted to evaluate, their language skills, their employability skills, and their soft skills. And the platform worked so well that one of our customers came up to us and says, "Do you know we don't interview anymore?" And I said, "What do you mean you don't interview?" He says, "Well, we've run through the both scenarios, and we've realized that the platform works as well as a human, if not better. And hence that's where we are now."
Wow. That's interesting. That brings to mind a lot of different questions all around interviewing and hiring. Like, what are some common biases and stereotypes that HR professionals should be aware of during the hiring process? Because that comes up a lot.
Well, I think, it comes back from when you meet someone, there's I was reading this article from the Princeton psychologists, Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov, if I don't pronounce it well. It says it takes a split second to make an impression on a stranger's face. So that's fascinating. No matter where you are, you make a judgment call, conscious or unconscious, automatically. So bias, there's all kinds of bias. And I think that, when we our instincts are really deceiving to us sometimes. So we have to figure out how to remove all those types of biases, ageism, sexism, racism. But there's so many of them. And really, we have to look at the human and the skills they possess and hire them based on those skills and the skills you need to do the work.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned all the isms and so forth. How can HR professionals ensure a fair and unbiased evaluation of candidate qualifications and skills? Is that even possible?
Well, I think it is for frontline workers. I think that the type of roles we use our platform for. So, just to clarify things, we're not hiring managers. We're not using our platform to hire, leadership or C-suite or any types of those roles. We're really focusing on, customer-facing roles where the most important skill is really your ability to understand customers and talk to customers, or oftenly referred to as people skills or human or soft skills. And they're really specific skills. And, there's a lot of studies around that. And they say that career success is based around that. So we evaluate those skills in using an artificial intelligence platform. And it really does it unbiased. We're looking for, does the candidate understand the question? Can they articulate a clear and concise answer? Can that answer be understood by your client? So that's really, it's like creating these very hard metrics to evaluate things that sometimes people consider unmeasurable. And to do that in interview either takes a lot of time, and especially when you're doing high volume, and you have to have multiple rounds. And even then, you'll have the same candidate presented to two different people, and they'll have two different opinions of that same person. And it's not based on science or metrics. So using an impartial tool that does that and is verified to make sure it's impartial leads to better results.
I can imagine someone listening and thinking that they would want to eliminate discrimination and maybe promote diversity in their hiring practices. How would they go about doing that, you think?
Well, again, if I go back to, really looking on people's skills is the most important part. We work with companies, global companies that are around the world, and we just focus on the skills required for that job. So, you don't, and CVs are typically, not for these types of roles, are not a good indicator of what the skills that people have. And as we're going through more and more in the future in these high volume roles, it's really skills based and really focus on the skills. So I think if you focus on the skill and you give that person a fair shot at the job, using an unbiased process, then you'd be surprised at the results you get.
Interesting. Now, I keep saying interesting because I do find it interesting. Is this a thing that HR should do with their gut, or is there some certain kind of strategies or tools that it should use to mitigate unconscious bias in the process?
Yeah, well, I think we're a tech platform that offers this platform around the world. And I think if you use a tool, it really helps you to if you use this as the first step, it does two things. The first step is that it gives that candidate, and the worry all the time is that if you're adding a step to the hiring process, you're going to get less candidates. And the reality is that candidates prefer having an unbiased approach. Our platform, what we do is that we run the candidate to a job simulation where they actually have to take customer calls or customer scenarios, and they have to answer to the best of their ability. And we evaluate what they're saying and how they're saying, and if they understand the questions. And candidates prefer this. So, we have some customers who were terrified about losing candidates, especially in a tight job market. And the reality is that they ended up with more candidates, and the candidates appreciated not being judged from their background, whoever they are, just being judged by their ability. So that's the number two. And the other part of it is that for recruiters is that if you do use an interview, you do it later on in the stage, and you already have these metrics in front of you that helps you gauge that candidate. So it's like, instead of using a CV, you're using a profile that's been designed about the ability of the candidate to talk to customers. So it's really rethinking this hiring of, the CV, then interview, and then another interview, and just saying, well, isn't it best just to put that person in a role and give him a chance to do the role, and getting an unbiased way to evaluate how well they did that role. And that's how we're approaching that problem.
Okay. Typically, I hear when people are talking about biases and so forth, and diversity comes up, and then there's the nomenclature of cultural fit, which I struggle with getting a definition for cultural fit. With every company. How can HR professionals navigate the challenge between balancing diversity with hiring for cultural fit, whatever that is?
Yeah, whatever that is. Yeah, cultural fit. I think that the way we get around cultural fit, not get around, but we've created. I think companies have to create very clear values of what they're looking for to hire and what the company stands for. Some of our values, we have 8 core values, but every time that we hire somebody, we make sure to mention them to the candidate. And these values could be, it's okay to make a mistake, but to learn from it is more important than to try to hide it. So that's one of our values. Everyone's different, and the opportunities in life, everyone deserves a fair opportunity to whatever it may be in life. So, and just, make sure that these values are nice and clear, that people, and you follow those values constantly. So we follow those values in our hiring. We follow those values when candidates are being hired through our platform. And every day we live by those values. You know, everyone deserves a fair shake. Everyone deserves a fair opportunity. The world is not created equally, but doesn't mean that, you know, you can have a fair shake at things.
Sure, sure. There is a HR Tech conference around the corner, a major one.
Yeah.
And I make an easy prediction that if you walk through the HR Tech conference, you won't be able to go 2 feet without seeing the word AI or someone mentioning artificial intelligence in some way. What role do you think technology plays in promoting fair hiring practices, whether it's AI powered or not? Are there any risks or limitations someone should be aware of, you think?
Yeah, I think like there are a lot of examples of poor AI used poorly. And then you have to be careful about introducing bias, making sure your data sets that you're evaluating the right things. That's really important. But I think more and more is what we're seeing, especially with generative AI or just, regular AI, is that these tools are really something that are a bit of a co-pilot to help you in your job. So hiring managers, but not only any kind of job nowadays, like they can really process a lot of information. They can do it really accurately, but also just as importantly, you need to keep an eye on it. So, part of the process, you have to constantly evaluate how well your AI and making sure that, you don't have bias creep introduced into whatever you're doing, and start with clear rules of what your expectations are.
Yeah, I guess in terms of reducing bias, I imagine that would happen during the initial screening and the resume review stage.
Yeah.
How can professionals promote inclusivity or diversity, you call it what you will, and reduce the bias during the initial screening and resume review stage?
Yeah, so we don't work in that space.
Okay.
Okay. The way that our customers have looked at it and the partnerships is that we've tried to use our platform as the first stage. And believe it or not, we have a lot of customers that the CV is used really at the last step. And the CV is just really a validation of what, the skills that as proven through our platform that they have, just to make sure there's no blaring omissions or holes. There's a great article by Harvard Business Review that talks about there's 27 million hidden workers in North America today.
Hidden workers.
Hidden worker.
Yeah.
Yes.
How are they hidden?
So they're hidden because they have CVs that may not indicate, that may have holes in them. So they have example of military spouses that have traveled all over the world and may not have worked for 10 years.
Okay.
So they've got great skills because, it's not easy to travel around, live in different parts of the world and come back. But so a CV parsing tool would just eliminate them, or a housewife who's raised a boatload of children.
Sure.
Again, it's the same thing. The CV parsing tool is biased. This person hasn't worked, they can't do the job. But I can guarantee you that person, these type of people can talk to they can talk to your customers. They have great soft skills. They know how to listen, hopefully. But it really, this is what the hidden worker scenario is.
That's a good example you said there. I'm thinking of someone that I met at a conference, who was a TA manager, and she had 7 kids. And she somehow manages 7 kids and a full desk at work at the same time. And I was like, how old are the kids? And they were all relatively young, And I'm like, oh my gosh, you must be like an awesome manager. You can manage all that at home and then come to work and then go back home to that. Oh my goodness. I was blown away by her. She was quite impressive.
There's a lot of these people around, you just overlook it. We did a project with a big American telco, and our platform was hiring people. We're recommending people, because we don't hire, recommending people that they would have never looked at. And more importantly, they're performing better than their old process. So you really need to widen, the funnel, and you need to focus on the skills for that job. And that skill for that job is different from a sales role or a support role or a telco, and people are comfortable in different things. And you need to really hone in on those skills.
Are you able to talk about any legal implications and compliance requirements surrounding fair hiring practices? Because that question comes up a lot when I'm talking to other people. And how can the HR professional stay up to date on that kind of stuff? How do you stay up to date on that?
Yeah, so we say, yeah, we have an AI governance paper that's we have a framework where we're based in Canada,
Okay.
and the government runs a project called AI governance. So we follow that governance principles, and those principles make sure that you're constantly testing your AI and algorithms to make sure there's no bias into these. And over and over again, we doesn't matter where you're from, your ethnicity, your sex, your beliefs, your religious beliefs. Our tool does not discriminate against any of those, and that's really important when you're doing governance, that you're making sure that you're very clear and transparent, and it's not a black box making decisions. So
If a tool, I'm curious, if a tool proves not to be compliant in some way,
yeah.
is there some kind of fee or some kind of penalty that you have to pay?
Not currently in Canada, but it's something that our large enterprise customers, we review the data constantly. I know that in some states there's some new rules that there are penalties. So you have to be a good citizen. You have to live by the words you preach.
Sure.
But yeah, there are some penalties.
Okay.
But yeah.
I was curious because here, like in New York, not New York now, but there's a New York law.
Yeah.
New York Law 144 that says you got to be audited once a year to make sure your company is the products you use, your tech stack is compliant with non-bias. And so if someone checks your secret sauce in your tools, and if you are found wanting, then get your checkbook out. Because they will hit you hard. I mean, it was something crazy. I think it could be as much as 10,000 a day or something like that, depending on how many infractions or how serious it is. So I thought, man, that's a easy way to, well, it's an easy way, but there's a way to check for bias, but it's also a way to raise tax money up, I would think, too. Because you got to do it every year. They got to check you every year.
Yeah. And is that, and I've read that law. I'm not familiar with every detail, but is that including your normal hiring practices? Your standard CV and interview?
I don't know. To my knowledge, it's just checking the tool itself.
Yeah.
And it's called, New York Law 144, but it's also been cited as Automated Employment Decision Tool.
Right.
Because there are other cities implementing similar things like that, but it hasn't gone federal yet.
Yeah. So I think, and I think those are good initiatives, but I think that should be across the board. You're not just with automated tools. Even sometimes, your legacy processes can have bias. You should be just as accountable to your interview and CV parsing. You're doing manually, and if you have bias in that, and you have a workforce not reflective of what's out there, then I think you should just be as liable.
Sure.
Yeah.
How do you, speaking about bias and liability, we haven't talked about pay equity. How do you ensure fair compensation practices during the hiring process?
Oh my God, that's really out of my wheelhouse. I think we have with it. I can talk to you about what we do in our company. Is that we do have a fair pay policy in place, and we have categories of jobs, and everyone is based on experience, and we live by that. So and it's really important. And again, we try to be with our employees as transparent as possible, and internally we make sure that everyone is treated equally, regardless of background or so. It's important if we're promoting a tool and developing a technology that helps promote diversity and equal opportunity, that we do the same internally. And companies need to do that. Like, they need to be transparent, and they need to have a deep look into their hiring practices and pay practices.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. I also wonder, like, when I hear about non-bias initiatives and the things we're talking about, one thing that always has to sort of scratch my head, because I just don't know the answer. I don't know if it can be answered, actually. But how can HR professionals measure and track the effectiveness of their fair hiring practices? Because one can make the argument that they hired the best person fairly, but that person might not necessarily be a minority per se. But because they're not a minority, does that mean that they were hired unfairly because they're not a minority? I mean, I've heard arguments around that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. What your first is, these are difficult questions to answer.
Yeah.
There's no obvious, but you know, where we're based in Canada, like we again, like it's really have to make sure that you have to give people the opportunity, regardless. Like you really have to give the people opportunity regardless of where they're from. Like we have as a company, we're extremely diversified, and because of our hiring practices really based on your skill set. Do you have the skill regardless of where you're from, what sex you are? It's really important as a company, and if you follow this, then the beauty of it is that you have this great company that has all kinds of skills from all kinds of people with all kinds of experiences, and as a company you grow and evolve, and you come up with incredible solutions to your problems, and you sort of like you're automatically building into this unbiased approach because everyone has a different opinion. So yeah, we're very proud of how we've accomplished that.
Very cool. I want to, you've been very generous of your time, but I got to get your reaction to this one article that came up on my radar the other day. It was it was sort of funny. The headline says, restaurant goes viral for signs saying now hiring non-stupid people. And here's a quote from the article. No help wanted here. An Ohio restaurant got creative in attempts to attract reliable employees and hung a sign outside of his business saying, now hiring non-stupid people. The signs were hung outside of Santino's Pizzeria in Columbus, and after they were posted on social media last week, the business has been getting a lot of attention. No doubt. What do you is it biased to say we're not hiring stupid people? What do you think about it?
I like to qualify what's stupid and not stupid according to this restaurant owner. Is it biased? It doesn't sound very fair. Quantifying all these things. People have different skills for different jobs. You can't. And they do different things. A scientist is very different from a customer service. They have different skills. I can't live without our customer service, who has incredible communication skills, and he's really empathetic. Our person who runs that department. So I don't think it's right to be quantifying people as stupid or non-stupid. That this is not great hiring practices. Definitely biased. Definitely biased.
Yeah, well, if there is a silver lining, they got a lot of publicity for that pizzeria. Don't know if it's the kind they wanted, but they did get a lot of it.
Yeah, I think someone had a bad day when they put out that ad.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. If someone wanted to get in contact with you and learn more about your business, or just sort of pick your brain, how can they find you online?
Yeah, they can find us at hiringbranch1word.com. Our emails are on that website, and we'd be thrilled to talk to you about what we're building and how we're excited for the future.
Cool beans. I'll also make it easy, dear listener. I'll leave a link to his website in relevant information in the podcast description. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's been great. Appreciate it very much.
Well, my time is up. I thank you for yours. I'll see you again real soon right here with a brand new episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached by email at jimstroud@jimstroud.com. And one last favor, if I may ask, please rate this podcast. 5 stars is preferred, but please comment with your honest opinion. I really appreciate that. All right? Okay, until next time, bye-bye.